Okay, here we go. Today
I have
is
to accept it?
Yes, this is January the 28th. Addison Schonland here. My guest is Ron Baur, who is president of Azorra Aviation. Ron, thank you for fitting me in late on a Friday afternoon when we both
No worries, Addison.
we're both looking out the window.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you in this crazy times, but looking out the window to see the snow falling, which I think you're also having.
We are, yes. Beautiful day here in Chicago.
Yeah, I got to say I've had enough of winter already. But anyway, so what we want to do is we're going to talk about a little bit about the new company. Maybe we can start off there with, tell us about Azorra.
Yeah, great. Again, Addison, thanks for having me. I wouldn't really call Azorra a new company. It was founded by John Evans about 5 years ago with a focus on executive jets. And about last year, Oaktree Capital made an investment into Azorra with a $350 million equity investment. That really kind of propelled us with our growth. John Evans is a very well-known person in the industry. I've known him for quite some time, very well respected. He started 2 companies before that, Indigo and Jetscape, and then about 5 years ago, he started Azorra. And then in the last year is when we really kind of picked up momentum. I actually joined Azorra back in May. Before that, I was with Embraer, and then before that, I was with United and Continental. United and Continental, I bought and sold all the airplanes, and Embraer, I was running global leasing, is where I met you. More closely, I remember one of our meetings at the air show many years ago. But
remember those things called air shows?
Yeah, the good old days. The the Azorra team, they've been with John for quite some time. We actually call it a family, and I'm from outside the family, but like I said, I joined in May. We're having a lot of fun. It's a very exciting time for us, with the investment by Oaktree. We also have a warehouse, a $500 million credit warehouse facility with Credit Suisse. And having those 2 things behind us, we can act quickly. We can do things as a lessor that we've been taking advantage of. We've ordered new aircraft, for example, brand new A220s and E2s, and also buying used aircraft as well. So it's just a great time to be at Azorra, and like I said, I'm having a lot of fun. I've also wanted to work for a leasing company. I've worked in an airline, an OEM, and now at a leasing company. It's just really it's been a blast.
That's great. So there's been some consolidation in the leasing business, obviously. How do you describe Azorra's focus?
That's what drew me to Azorra. It was really John's vision with the company, and this is what Oaktree invested into. And really, it's the space that we're in. We kind of view our segment, our space, to be we call them crossover jets, 150 seats and below. These are aircraft like the E2, the A220, the regional jets. We would have turboprops. It's really that segment. We like that segment a lot for a couple of reasons. One, most importantly, it's a segment that in difficult times like COVID or the GFC, the global financial crisis, 9/11, airlines use the smaller aircraft more often just because the trip costs are better, right, in low demand environments. So we view the airplane as very counter-cyclical. It's a space of the market that is not as competitive. You really need to know your customers more. You're dealing with smaller airlines, more regional airlines for that matter, and it's just a less competitive space, which is good. And then finally, there's been a lot of, we call it dislocation in the space, and a lot of consolidation, dislocation with Nordic Aviation Capital filing for bankruptcy. We have a lot of respect for NAC, but when that happens, that does provide opportunities for lessors like us. GCAS, AerCap acquired GCAS. GCAS used to be the world's biggest regional lessor. So again, we just view these as opportunities. We're, I'd say, quite opportunistic at Azorra. And we think, all those factors combined, we think the space that works, is very interesting to us. It's really one of the reasons that brought me to Azorra.
You dwelled a little bit there on the term crossover jets. That's a fabulous name for that segment. I remember Richard Abalafi once describing that segment to me as the graveyard. We're talking about the previous generation, the Fokkers, Dorniers, and so on. That segment is incredibly popular. The 220 has obviously taken off, the E2 also, but a little slower.
Yep.
And you pointed out that it's lower trip cost, but it's interesting to me that all of a sudden this is the segment everybody wants to get their hands on. It's like that area, and then let's say the 200-seat, like the 321 sized airplane.
Yeah.
We don't have a Boeing right there right now, but let's say the MAX 10 will be in that space. Those two seem to be amazingly hot. And it is interesting. I noticed that for the first time last year, the 321 outsold the 320.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, right? So, some
there's a
airlines are up gauging.
There's a bifurcation happening here.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of the reasons we bought the A220 and the E2. We do think there's that bifurcation. I think what's different, and I would disagree with Richard's comments about the graveyard, only in the sense that these aircraft are different because not only have much lower trip costs, but they have a very similar CASM to the A320 and the 737. So you're able to, fly an aircraft with a lot less risk. And you saw that with the 787 relative to bigger aircraft like the 777 or the A380 or the 747, where aircraft with the same cost per seat, but a much lower trip cost is a really effective tool. I used to run fleet for Continental and United, and that was always our mantra: was aircraft where you could, it was the holy grail, lowering your cost per seat as well as your trip cost. That's what makes those aircraft successful. So aircraft like the E2, when you compare them to the A319, the 737-700, the current generation aircraft, these are aircraft that have much better economics, and as a result, they can fill that need profitably. And then also, what we're really seeing with our customers is there's really an increased focus on green aircraft, and because the A220 and the E2, they're clean sheet designs with the state-of-the-art aircraft, very efficient wings. You have this combination of great economics, very green aircraft, very quiet aircraft. And for us, we just think that's, winning combination. We buy aircraft for 20 to 25 years over the long term, and having an aircraft with the latest technology, latest efficiencies, we just think it's a really good investment. That's really what kind of drove us to order the A220s and the E2s.
I think another thing that sort of gets lost here a little bit about the current generation of crossovers is their range. We were talking to the CEO at Helvetic, and he was pointing out to us that because of the E2's range, they can create these literally weekend markets to Reykjavik out of Zurich. I mean, that's a long ride on a small airplane. He also said to us that at the height of, I guess when COVID exploded everywhere, there were a bunch of Swiss stuck in Central Africa.
Yeah,
and they
remember that.
They were able to take the E2 down there and bring them back. Small plane that it wasn't a big thing, but they had the legs to go there and come back. And you would never be able to do that on a 146 or a Fokker, any of those airplanes. It's just amazing how capable these airplanes are. So it's the size 9 shoe that seems to be doing a lot more than just the size 9.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. When I was running fleet, I used to tell the guys who I worked with, my favorite word is flexibility. Having a flexible fleet, but having an aircraft with a lot of range gives you that flexibility to open up new markets, do some unique things like you just talked about as well. I think what's unique with these aircraft is they have that flexibility due to range, but they haven't really sacrificed their cost. Some aircraft that you put a lot of range into, like the 777-200LR, it's a great aircraft if you use the range, but when you don't use that range, it can be quite expensive.
Right.
But I think where Embraer and Airbus have done a really good job is finding that sweet spot of the range versus the economics of the aircraft. So it's that balance, but it makes a lot of sense to me, like you said, with airlines finding these new opportunities like Zurich to Reykjavik that you couldn't do with other aircraft.
And another aspect of what you guys are doing, of course, is the focus on regionals, and you mentioned NAC, but putting that aside, the regional market seems to be struggling, and there's a lot of activity now, electric airplanes. I have to say, it's actually got the stage where it's funny. 100 of these, 200 of those. I mean, it's like buying lollipops, right? How do you see the regional market in the next 5 years, 10 years?
I think electric aircraft, things like that, we haven't studied that closely. We did place an order for the eVTOLs through the Eve, but I think the regional aircraft, they show their importance to the airlines, especially during downturns. In the United States, if you look at the regional flying, they were doing a lot of the flying just because the demand was low.
Right.
I think the value that these aircraft provide in the feed to the big airlines is quite valuable. So I think them, getting stronger and just being just as important as they have been to their to their mainline customers, especially here in the U.S. for sure.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I have this one question here about something beyond 150 seats, which is not really the space that Azorra's in. But just if you have a thought on it, I would appreciate it. In the single aisle segment, we were talking a little bit earlier about the 321. There's this strong move, like we were talking about the bifurcation. So we've discussed the smaller side of that. How do you see it's almost going into the middle of the market category here? What's going on? Why is there this interest in a 321 size, like basically the old 757 space? It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think, when I was at Continental, we were upgauging a lot. We were from 800s to 900 yards, then from 900 yards up to max 10s. I think there's almost a drive to upgauge. You can lower your unit costs, as airports become more congested. But I also think it's important to do things in a very balanced way. And that's where we think the aircraft like the A220 crossover jets have a real good fit in there. You can't just upgauge everything because then the airline becomes inefficient where you have aircraft that are too big. I do think one benefit of COVID, not there's a benefit, but I think one thing that stood out was that, having aircraft of the right size is really important. And if you have an aircraft that's too big, it's great when times are good, but in down times, they really become expensive. And that's why, all the smaller aircraft kept flying and the bigger aircraft are being parked. You see that not only in the wide bodies, but also on the narrow bodies. And I think, everything in life's a balance. You can't have all big aircraft. I think there'll always be, especially here in the US, kind of the more, dominant or larger share. But I really believe that there's going to be, a significant need for the crossover size aircraft, the A220, the E2. And to be honest, that was really kind of what drove our investment in the aircraft. So look, we're excited about both these airplane types. I think there's a lot of uses for it around the world. Your point about range is a good one. The flexibility that these airplanes offer, the costs, environmental friendliness of it, we just think it's a really, great combination. We're really excited about it.
Ron, thanks so much. Thanks so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, likewise. Anytime, Madison. Good to see you again.